everyone, my name is Shauna in case you don't know, and welcome back to another video. In today's video I'm going to be doing the opposites book tag. So for each of these prompts there are two prompts that are polar opposites, and I am going to be getting up and running around my room to grab the books, so hopefully I get some exercise in while filming this video. So let's crack on into this video. The first question is the first book in your collection and the last book you bought. So I'm not sure what the very first book in my collection was, so I just found one of the ones that I've had the longest, which is this edition of Little Red Riding Hood. This is by Marjorie Priceman. This is a pop-up book, and I loved pop-up books when I was younger, and I remember having fond memories of reading this one. You have to be very careful with pop-up books, but as you can see, I really cherish books, and I've cherished them since I was little, so I've made sure to keep all of my books in very good condition. And to go with the opposite, which is the last book that I bought, this was Heartstopper Volume 3 by Alice Osman. I got this from Pals Books. I've read the first two in this series so far and I've really enjoyed them, so I think I'm definitely going to enjoy Volume 3. This series is a cute series with gay representation about this gay couple, and it's very cute, and it's like the pure, wholesome representation that we have all wanted and needed for years. It's in graphic novel format. I highly recommend this to everyone. I feel like it's pretty age appropriate for most age groups. I just really love this series so much and I'll never stop talking about it. Next up is a cheap book and an expensive book. So I buy a lot of my books from Goodwill, which is a really underrated place to buy books. Just books are a lot cheaper there, and people don't check the book section that often in Goodwill, so there's a lot of good books there. So recently I picked up this one, The Perfectionist by Shepard. I watched the show and I really enjoyed it, so I'm excited to be reading the book at some point. I peeled off the price tag, which I hate Goodwill price tags, it always rips off a little bit of the book, but I believe this was $2 or $3, so very cheap. And then for the opposite, a book that was expensive, this one, I received this one as a gift for Christmas last year or 2 years ago, and this one, according to the price tag, was $35. So that is really expensive, but of course most of these like Harry Potter books that are illustrated are really expensive. There's a lot of detail to them and they are very big. Next up is a book with a male protagonist and a book with a female protagonist. So the newest Hunger Games book is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins, and this has a male protagonist. Coriolanus Snow is the male protagonist. This is obviously a prequel to the Hunger Games, giving a backstory to President Snow. And then on the opposite side of the gender spectrum, we have The Lost Girls by Sonia Hartle, and the main character in this book is named Holly, and she is clearly a female. This is like John Tucker Must Die, but a vampire sapphic version. Next up is a book you read quickly and a book that took you long to read. A book I read quickly is Embrace Your Weird by Felicia Day. So I read this one quickly because it was interesting and because I pre-ordered it and I was meeting Felicia Day a few days after I pre-ordered it, and so my goal was to finish it by the time that I met her, so I forced myself to read this one really quickly. This was also enjoyable, so I would have read it quickly anyways. And then a book that took me a long time to read. There are a lot that I could have chosen for this answer, but I'm going to be going with this chunker. The Host by Stephanie Meyer. So this took me a while to read, not only because it's long, but because it is so boring for most of the book. I would say that maybe like 25% of this book is interesting, but the rest is so slow that it is a pain to get through. So this one took me a really long time to read. The Host is an alien invasion story with some romance, and it just goes on and on and on. I will read the sequel if it ever comes out, but so that one's probably going to take me a while to get through too, unless it's magically faster paced. Next up is a national book versus an international book. So for a national book, I have Cinder from Marissa Meyer. Marissa Meyer is from Tacoma, Washington, which is fairly close to me. Like, I do day trips to Tacoma sometimes. I've also seen that she does a lot of book signings around where I live, so maybe I'll meet her someday if I like the rest of her books, because this was only a 3-star read for me. And then for international book, I have Blood Split. It is translated from Sweden. So yes, this is a thriller that I spur of the moment decided to buy, but I sort of regret buying it, but I will read it at some point because I read every book that I own. Also, I think part of the reason why I got this book is because it has a nice flop to it. You know, you just like want a good flop sometimes, and this one has a good flop. I just realized I did this out of order, so next up is a pretty cover and an ugly cover. So a pretty cover, The Selection by Kiera Cass. I love all of the covers for the Selection series, and it's a main reason why I picked up this series. I just love pretty dresses and a book with an ugly cover. Before you go, oh no, that's actually a pretty cover, let me show you the details. We have Carrier of the Mark. On first glance, it looks fine. It looks great. But do you see that hand? That poorly photoshopped hand? That's ugly. And then the cover of the second book in the series is just basically the same cover but with a purple dress. So it's pretty at first glance, but if you actually look at it closer, oh, the crop of the hair is pretty bad too. Yeah, it's just poorly photoshopped. It looks pretty from afar, but not so pretty close up. Next up is a thin book versus a thick book. So a thin book is Girls Who Looked Under Rocks, The Lives of 6 Pioneering Naturalists by Janine Atkins. So I used to be really into geology. I still appreciate geology, but I'm not as much into it because I took a geology course in college, and let me tell you, when you are really interested in something, half the time when you take a college course it will ruin your interest for that thing. So that course ruined my interest for geology. I still appreciate it, but I'm not super obsessed. But this book is very thin, and it was a very good book that I really enjoyed reading at the time. And it's not just geology, okay? So it talks about like Rachel Carson and Jane Goodall, who aren't geologists, but there is some geology stuff mentioned in here. And then a thick book that I don't remember anything about, unfortunately, is Magic by Angie Sage. Bam, it's a thick book. Next up is a fiction book versus a non-fiction book. For a fiction book, I'm going with Written in the Stars by Aisha Saeed. This book is a book that involves arranged/forced marriage. It's a very difficult book to read because it's so heavy in content matter, but I thought that it was really well written and a very important book to read. And for non-fiction book, I'm going to show Joey Graceffa's In Real Life, My Journey to a Pixelated World. This is Joey Graceffa's memoir. It's just a typical YouTuber memoir. You know, some photos here and there, and some life stories. And Joey's life story is interesting, but I mean, most YouTuber memoirs follow the same format, and they aren't the most impressive when it comes to writing style. I did enjoy it, it just is not perfect. So next up is a romantic book versus an action book. I don't feel like getting up for this one, so I'm going to be doing ones that I have read as ebooks. So a romantic book that I read was Cheer Up, Love and Pom-Poms by Crystal Fraser. Cheer Up is a cute little graphic novel romance story between a trans cheerleader and a cheerleader who sort of doesn't really fit in with the whole cheerleader vibe. It's very cute, very quick. I would love it if there was a sequel, but I don't know if we'll get a sequel. I really enjoyed Cheer Up, Love and Pom-Poms. And then an action book, I'm going with Darling by Kay Ingram. This was one of my favorite reads of this year. I know I've talked about it so much on my channel, but I'll never stop. Darling is a Peter Pan retelling that has thriller elements to it, and there's lots of representation in there. I really enjoyed it. I wish more people would read Darling so that I can like scream about it with people, you know? And then number 10, a book that made you happy and one that made you sad. Again, gonna go with ebooks for this one because I'm feeling too tired to stand up and grab the books. For a book that made you happy, I'm going to be doing Junior Hero Blues. I believe it's by Kay Pendragon? Let me double check that. Oh, it's by J.K. Pendragon. I was so close. Junior Hero Blues is a cute middle grade / young adult story. It's sort of a mix of both, and it's about superheroes, and there is a gay couple that it features, and it was a lot of fun. It made me so happy to read. I was constantly smiling from it. And one that made me sad was Returning to Carthage by Ben Sharafsky. This is a book that was sent to me by the author, and while I did overall enjoy it, it did make me very sad. First of all, there's lots of cheating in this book. Cheating makes me sad. I don't agree with cheating. I never agree with cheating. And then the second thing that made me sad is the final story documents this guy losing his mom, and it made me cry. It was sad. It was like really good, but it was like really sad. So Return to Carthage is one that definitely made me sad. It was still good, just very sad. And those are all the prompts for this tag. I hope you enjoyed this book tag. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to me if you haven't already. All of the links to all of the books I've mentioned in this video, I know there's like 20 of them, but all the links to these books will be linked down in the description below, so you can check them out if you are interested in them. I upload videos 3 times a week, so I will see you next Friday for my next video. I hope all of you are having a great start to your week, and I will see all of you in my next video. Goodbye!